Okay, so let's start today's lecture. So the idea is that uh, the CMB. So basically, what we want to measure using a telescope is CMB signal, okay, or the cosmological signal. But what I showed from the Planck data, the Planck Rayleigh measurement, you cannot observe the CMB at a single frequency. Okay, so there is no clean frequency channel where you can just go and observe the CMB. So that is why people observe and multiple frequencies. So there is a range for previously for WMAP there is a range from 23 gigahertz to 94 gigahertz. For Planck it is 30 gigahertz to 857 gigahertz. So people observe and some limited range of frequency, and then using this simple internal linear combination method, we can extract the CMB signal. Okay. But on those frequency, we will observe many other things. Okay. So those things for cosmologists, this is secondary science you can do. Uh, I talk about synchrotron radiation. So today I will go through what are the different science you can learn from those things which we throw away. Okay, so for CMB, we have to remove those foregrounds, throw away those signal, and extract the cosmological signal which people are interested in, like to derive the cosmological parameter. But those signal is also very interesting, and there is a unique science you can do with those frequency channels. Okay, so that is the goal of today's lecture. To first tell you how to simulate it. Okay. So if you want to develop some your own component separation method, at least you know like what are the different components, how to simulate it, and then the next part is the lecture part where I say what are the current understanding of those components and what we can learn from that. Okay. So that is not interesting for cosmologists, but those who are working in galactic astrophysics, or even you can do some cosmology with that, it itself is a very interesting thing. So there are a lot of things you can do with the Planck data. It's not limited to just cosmology or like estimating the cosmological parameter. So let me share my screen. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So last time people asked to upload my lecture on this share folder. So I did that. Uh, I did it yesterday. So you can go to the share folder workshop ISI. If you go to my name, this uh, first two lecture PDF is there, and also the tutorial and the Python notebook is there. Okay. Second thing is this Planck Legacy Archive. So I checked it. You can create a username. So what we, for today's purpose, we need a sign in. Okay. So to download the maps, you don't need sign in, but to access something else, we need to sign in. So I tried that yesterday. So it works. So anybody can sign in with their username. It's like opening a mail account. Once you have this sign in, you can access maps and other things. So what we are going to do is something called Planck sky model. Okay. So these are the Planck data. This is actual data. Okay. So now the question is, suppose we extract this CME map. So how we know that, or how we are sure that what we measure is actually a CMB map and not something else. Okay, so we are deriving the cosmological parameters from that CMB map. So what people do is they test their algorithm on simulation. So you have to make realistic simulation, so which looks like real sky, but in the simulation we know what are the ingredients there. Okay, so what are the different emission component which emits in this frequency range from say Planck frequency range 30 to 87 gigahertz. So we need very precise like to first order, like even if it accurate up to 10%, it is good enough so that you know what is going on or what are the different emission mechanism, and then you apply this your component separation method on both the method maps. In one case, you know that what is the CMB. In actual data, we don't know what is CMB, so we assume that whatever we observe. Uh, it is a combination of CMB, foreground, and noise. And the idea is to suppress the other component and extract the CMB signal. Okay, so you can go to Planck sky model. So to test your algorithm. So last time I gave you assignment where we take the real data, Planck data, say from 30 to 53 gigahertz, we smooth the map to 1 degree, and we apply the component separation method. Here we can test this same thing on simulation. Okay. So here, so it will generate a sky model. So the advantage is that it's open like interface, web interface is there. So you have to just give parameters here, and if you submit, there is a submit button here. If you submit, it will produce a map and send to you by mail. Okay, so then you can it will basically submit the job in some common cluster. It will run the job there. You can track your job ID. Then once the job is run, so this is heavy computation. Okay, so you don't need to run on your laptop or anything, or no installation. So it will produce the map, and then the final product in some zip format, it will send it to you. So then you can copy to your computer or some server and work with the data set. Okay. So here the idea is that you can simulate T or temperature and polarization maps. Okay. So let's say we are starting with temperature map. We can select what is the hill peaks resolution we want. Okay. So it has option up to 892. You can choose your cosmological parameters, which are listed here. Okay. And the extension of the models. Okay. So there are different models, like if you're interested in dark energy, the equation of state of the dark energy, whether it's -1 or not, or if it is sum of neutrino mass. Okay, so basically, if you're interested to see, like, if you have a neutrino mass, which is not sum of neutrino mass, which is not measured yet, but suppose you want to see if the neutrino mass is very high or very low, what will have is impact on the CMB map or the CMB power spectrum. So power spectrum is simple to calculate using this hp.nfast. Okay. So these are the different parameters, like there is a scalar to tensor ratio, running of spectral index, the amplitude of the primary power spectrum, the epoch of reannihilation. So there are some default parameters and some parameters you can choose. So you have to just change the parameter here. Then the model selection part comes. So here you can include only the CMB part. Okay, so if you want to interested to generate the CMB and want to see how the CMB map for given model with this cosmological parameter, how it looks like. Okay. So just a you want to see if the neutrino is say at least 10 times higher or like 50 times higher. So what will have impact on the CMB. So you can use that to simulate that. Then I will come to this later. So then there is a galactic emission. Okay. So this galactic emission is coming from these different sources like synchrotron emission, free flow emission, anomalous microwave emission. So details I will go cover in the lecture. But basically these are different emission that you can select or unselect. Okay. So if you don't want this, you can just unselect that and it will include only the synchrotron emission. And the model has some scaling law. So you can choose power law, simple model, or Gallup model. Okay. So that is the this part. Okay. Then you can select point source emission. So there are radio sources. So those people who are working on to see like how many sources are there and whether we can understand the number count of those sources. So there are point source emission. Okay, so there are you can select. There are many sources. So you can include radio sources. So that will dominate at low frequency. Then there are infrared sources which will dominate at larger frequencies. Then you can include the strong sources from the what is detected by Planck, or you can remove those. It is up to you. So that is the point sources. Then we have far infrared background emission. So this is other name is called cosmic infrared background emission. So there is a strong background in infrared which is coming from early galaxies. So if you go back to, if you want to see oldest galaxy, it is very difficult to see them, okay, or dissolve them. So they are like the CME fluctuation. You can see those fluctuation of the infrared background. So from that we can learn about the galaxy formation. Okay, so that is also kind of part of cosmology. It's not cosmological parameter, but we want to understand the galaxy formation. Okay. And then there is a Sunyaev-Zel'dovich effect. So if you want to detect clusters, so these are basically from optical, you can measure there is a cluster of galaxies. So galaxies, they can form a gravitationally stable structure with a lot of galaxy, which is cluster of galaxies. Now, from optical, it is difficult to determine. Uh, okay, so from optical, it is uh, difficult to determine whether they are form part of same cluster or there are different distances. Okay, so with the experiment, with cosmic microwave background experiment, so if you have access to 100 gigahertz to 353 gigahertz, so there is a distinct signature of cluster in the CMB, which goes with the name Sunyaev-Zel'dovich effect. So we can measure or we can detect cluster in the microwave frequency through this technique. So basically, the idea is that we can detect new clusters, and then so this is coming from CMB experiment, and then we can follow it up once we know what is the location of the galaxy. Even if it is very far away, we can follow it through optical survey. So this galaxy clusters are usually detected using X-ray and microwave frequencies, and then detailed modeling is done in the optical. Okay, so there was this famous cluster, bullet cluster, which was observed in X-ray, optical, microwave, and all those frequencies, so that we can know like how, like what is the dynamics of this cluster. So here the idea is that you can select say CMB and galactic emission. Say we can select free AME and thermal dust. Okay, and then you want to select which instrument it is for what frequency you want to generate. So by default there is a Planck frequency. Okay, so you can select F. So this is a full frequency. Okay, and these are the detectors. So if you want to detect generate for detectors, also there is a flexibility of generating the other detectors, but we can generate for full frequency range. Okay, so this is for Planck instrument, and we can do it for other instrument like WMAP. Okay, so there is an option of simulating in WMAP frequency, or in future experiment like Lightbird or CMB S4. Okay, so this there are many options here. So, and there is the option of custom where you can detect your you can determine your own frequency range, at what frequency you want to determine. So like from the Indian side, we propose an experiment CMB Bharat. Okay. So it has different frequency range. So here we can mention what frequency, what is the band name, what is the central frequency, and what is the arc minute, and we can determine, we can simulate the sky at that frequency. Okay. So this is the instrument part. Okay, so you can determine either in general thing or any other frequency. So I suppose I'm generating a 30 gigahertz full frequency channel. Then the idea is that this co-addition rules. So it says that either we can simulate the sum total, which includes everything, including noise, or we can simulate all sky component, but not noise. Okay. So it basically gives you the CMB map individually, the foreground maps individually, the combined maps, and even with the noise realization. So for instrument which is already collected data, so we know what is the noise level, so we can simulate the noise. So this is only possible for instrument like Planck or WMAP, or the core we know like what is the noise level, but not for custom setting. Okay. And the output is like you can simulate all output files, which will give you individual component maps or the observation only. So then it will give you all the observation files, like the combined map. It also gives you the configuration file. So this Planck Sky model, it is also a software which you can install. So once you know what is the configuration file, then you can run that within that configuration file, you can run that software and it will give you the maps. So these all options are possible here. So the idea is that it is, the goal is to basically simulate at multiple frequency with all the sky complexities included, and see if the component separation method works and able to extract the CMB signal. The advantage here is because this is simulation, we can simulate many realization of the maps, and we can see like what it does in each realization, and we can see how much is the noise or the residual foreground contribution in the maps. So only thing what you have to do is once you select this, you submit it. Okay. So it says that the request ID is created. Okay. So it will, once the resulting products are ready to download, it will be notified an email with further instruction at my email ID. Okay. So it will basically submit a job to the cluster, and whenever it is done, it will give me the file which I can just download and store in my computer. Okay. So I think this is very handy tool which can be used to learn at different frequency how the sky looks like. Okay, at arbitrary frequency we can simulate with and without noise, and test any of the thing that you want to do if you want to study cosmology or like CMB. So you can test your algorithm on this simulated maps. Okay. There is a simpler version to that, which is called PySL. Okay, so the idea is that it is based on this Planck Sky model. So what it does, it instead of doing all those complex things, it just takes some of the templates and it simulates the sky. So some of the components you can simulate using the templates. Some are you need a power spectrum, like cosmic infrared background. Either you can use the template from what we get from the data, from the Planck data, and say, okay, so I know this is the CIB contribution, and then if I look at different frequency, this is how it scales. So in this software package, you can, it is based on template, so this is very light. Okay, so it quickly generates the frequency map. So it just, the scaling relations are also defined here. So it will just take the template, scale it to appropriate frequency, do the bandpass integration or not to do the bandpass integration, and it produces the map. And it is very easy to install. So you can do pip install PySN3. So in SciServer, if you type it, it will install. Like it's same as pip install HillPy. If you're not a root, you can do -- user. So it will install in your home directory. Okay. So it has some tutorial which says how to use this package. Okay. So just to give you an example, so they have different dust models. So they have a associate paper where they discuss about what these models are there. So this is the dust model. Okay, so D1. So they have D1, D2, D3, D4 like that. Okay. So it will, what it does, it will simulate a sky with this dust model, single component dust model at Nsight 128. Okay. And then, so this is written using class. So if you do --underscore class __, it will tell you the details of this model. What is like how these models are generated. Okay. Uh, and then, yeah, so once this array is defined, okay. So this is usually in ring format. So we can do hp.moleview to visualize this map. So this is a dust spectral index map, like how the spectral index varies from one pixel to another. Okay, so it's not a uniform map. So there is a patterns which you can see in this map. Okay. It can also determine the dust temperature. Okay. So this is just an example. And if you go back, uh, if you just say smoothing and coordinate transformation, okay, so it will generate you. So suppose you determine that. So this is basically the model. This is how it is called, and then you can define any frequency. Okay, so if you define 100 gigahertz, it will make the simulation at 100 gigahertz. So this is the dust map, dust plus synchrotron map at 100 gigahertz. And it will also have an advantage that it will smooth to your desired resolution. So once the experiment is defined, we know what is the resolution of the experiment. So we can put that and simulate the map. So this is the galactic coordinate where the galaxy is in the center, and this is in ecliptic coordinate. So this is something used by ground-based astronomer. So basically this coordinate is useful. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, say in Kolkata, you will access only up to like 70% of this upper half. So you're not able to access those lower half. And if you're in the South Pole, like Antarctica or Australia, you can observe like 70% from the bottom. Okay. So, but these are experiments like PAN, WMO, they are full sky experiments. So they can observe the full sky. So this is how it looks like in ecliptic coordinate. And the advantage of this software is that it can give you smooth maps. So then you don't need to uh, worry about other things. So once it is all smooth to common resolution, we can apply interlinear combination method or something to extract the CMB signal. So this is these tools I am mentioning is to simulate the foregrounds. You can independently simulate the CMB and then add all of them, including the noise, and see like how well the component separation performs. Okay. So I think this is for the tutorial up to this part. If you have any question, I'd like to take, and then we move to the lecture. Hello. Any questions? Okay. So let's move to the top part of it. So let me share my screen again. Okay. So this second, the last part of the lecture. So I put it separately purposefully so that so we don't talk about CMB. So here we are, suppose you are interested in galactic astrophysics. So what are the different science cases that you can do with the Planck data? Okay. So this data, uh, so suppose this is the map of the galactic plane. So you can see there is a lot of features in the map. So this is star forming region. Okay. So you can learn like how the star forming region looks like in the microwave frequency. Okay. And you can see the bright galactic plane region uh, in this white region. So this is problematic for cosmologists because they are not interested to measure this bright emission from our own galaxy. Okay. What they are interested is to get to the CMB, or the cosmic microwave background radiation. Okay. So this is the problem of cosmologists that can be turned into advantage for Milky Way astronomers. So those who are interested to study how what is the galactic magnetic field and what are the different components. So for them, it is advantageous because there is a huge amount of data, which is because it's all sky surveys, it is coming for free. Okay. So if you are trying to do it from ground, it is very difficult because the ground has telescope which is order of like 10 meter or 30 meter. 30 meter is coming up, so 10 meter dish. So we can observe very small fraction of the sky. Okay. But this experiment, so their beams are big, like 5 arc minute. So they give more detail or more diffuse picture of the Milky Way universe, or the Milky Way, sorry. So for cosmologists, they have to remove all this contamination to get to the CMB. Okay. So there, once this map is done, then we can calculate power spectrum, cosmological parameters, and other things. But this, so in this talk, I'm when what is peeling off, so that Milky Way galaxy physics is I will talk about. Okay. So why it is important to study these foregrounds? Okay. So one is you apply this using this blind method like internal linear combination method. You can get a CME map. You test on the simulation, but there is no way you can confirm that whatever you are extracting is the true CMB signal, because the simulation is based on the data what we learn. Okay. So it's not necessary that the simulation is exactly representing data. To first order, we said that like within 10% it works, but it's not that it is accurate to 0.0001%. Okay. So in some sense, it is interesting to understand what are the different foregrounds and how much it can contribute to or bias the cosmological parameters. So if we don't understand this and we say that we understand the cosmological parameter to 1% or sub percent accuracy. So I was showing those cosmological parameters, which is error bar is 0.3% or 1%. So without understanding this, it's not possible to actually give this number. Okay? And in the future, we are targeting this to even better accuracy. So the foreground model to first order, we understand up to 10% within 10%. But when we quote this sub% accuracy, we generally ignore about foregrounds. And now for B mode search, people realize that these foregrounds are very important, and most of the people are now working on foregrounds to understand its behavior so that it can help in the component separation method. So here we list this are different kind of foregrounds we have. We have synchrotron emission. So this is basically cosmic ray electrons which are gyrating around the electromagnetic field. Then we have thermal dust emission. So there are carbon grains and silicate grains. So due to the vibration, they will emit in the microwave frequency. So this dust emission, so you can see the picture of galaxy. We cannot see to center because there are a lot of dust emission. So they basically absorb the light in optical and emit in the microwave frequency or infrared frequencies. Okay. Then we have CMB. Then we have Sunyaev-Zel'dovich effect, which we discussed. We discussed about cosmic infrared background anisotropies, point sources. It can be radio point sources or infrared point sources, and the free emission. So free emission is due to the thermal Bremsstrahlung emission. So basically, when the photon or electron goes through the dense medium, it will accelerate and or deaccelerate, which will give rise to free emission. So for 40% of the sky, the CMB is dominant over all these other components, but it is not negligible. So in this plot, it is a factor of 100. Okay. So we know that within 1%, these components are dominant. Okay. But when we go to high L, okay, so at low L, around 200, the CMB is dominant across most of the frequencies. And this plot shows like what is the ratio of the signal over those foreground perturbation. But when you go to higher frequency, it is the foregrounds start dominating. And at high L, even at low frequency, it start dominating. So here it is lower, and here it is goes up. So it means that there is no single channel where we can observe the CMB without worrying about the foregrounds. So here it is order of factor of 100 in terms of power spectrum. Okay, so like 1% level. But in the map level, this is square. So in the map level, it is 10%. Okay, so basically we need to clean the signal to extract or tell about the CMB contribution. Okay. So now we can look at different emissions that we can study using the Planck survey. So what we can measure is the far infrared sky or the ISR. Okay. So Planck gives a broad picture of the distribution of this. So this is basically coming from the dust emission. So it basically says how the dust is distributed over the sky. And if you can measure the gas to dust ratio, it helps to understand how the dust is mixed with gas and like why the distribution is like that. Okay. So it is itself is a topic of research, and there is a dedicated mission called Herschel was launched along with Planck in 2009 to measure this in very great details. Okay, so you can see there are a lot of features in this map, and there are filamentary structures. So basically, those people who are interested in star formation, they are interested to know how the dust are distributed and where the star formation are taking place, and why these filamentary structures are important for the star formation. Okay, so where there are pre-stellar cores or like the new star formation takes place. So that is also people who are doing planetary science. For them, it is also important. Then they want to see, like, given this star or the stellar position, we can see where how the planets are formed. Okay, so that is something which itself is a very interesting topic. So you can see that from Herschel to Planck, it has more or less similar structure. It's just that Planck doesn't have that much good resolution for this kind of science. So we can get a broader picture, but at least we can have a full sky map, which Herschel does not have. Okay. So this map has a high dynamic range, which goes from 3 order of magnitude from galactic plane to fainter sky region. So there is a more dust contribution in the galactic plane, which is 3 order of magnitude higher than what is in the high latitude sky. So most high latitude sky, you will see very less dust. Okay, so it's like in galactic halo, it's not much dust is there. Okay. So this is the outline of talk where we discuss about what are the different science cases we can do with the with this with the plan. Okay. So one of the thing which is interesting is to trace the structure of the interstellar medium from all gas phases. Okay. So with Planck, what we can do is we can observe at multiple frequency. So say 100, 143, 217, 353, 545, 857. And then there is 100 micron data. So we want to see what is the spectral dependence of this emission. And from that, we can tell uh, what are the different, what is the dust physics and what are the different composition of this dust, whether they are made up of one type of dust or they are different kind of dust, why it is emitting. Okay, it is important for optical astronomers because when they measure distances, they are obscured by this dust emission. So they want to know what is the dust reddening, which is mentioned here, at any given location, and they have to correct for this effect to actually know what is the magnitude of the star or like what is the flux coming from that star. So for all the purpose, we need a dust map, very high resolution, to say how the dust is distributed over the sky. Uh, so what is done here is we have the intensity we can fit with a modified blackbody spectrum. So this BU is a blackbody function or modified blackbody function. Okay, so for blackbody, we know it depends only on the temperature. So it has similar to this behavior, but not the frequency dependence is modified here with a beta factor so that we can know what is this beta. So from once we correct for this spectral dependence, what we will get is the optical depth, and from the optical depth we can know what is dust reddening, and also to estimate the mass of the objects. Okay, so we can say like uh, we know the galaxy is say has this many stars. Each star has some mass, so we know that how much this contribute to the energy budget. But this interstellar medium is something is not easy to measure. So we can measure through the dust emission. Then we can see how much energy contribution the dust emission or the interstellar medium contributes to the total energy budget. So for that purpose is also very interesting. Okay. So yeah, so this is the picture I was talking about. So in optical, you can see that you cannot see beyond some point. It's mostly this black region is obscuration by the dust. So basically, the dust particle they absorb the optical light or and then emit in infrared. And something interesting also it does it is that it when it absorbs, so these dust particles are not constant, so they move around the galactic magnetic field. So it usually what it does it is absorbs unpolarized light, and when it emits in infrared, it emits in it produces a polarization. So from the polarization, we can tell what is the orientation of the galactic magnetic field at that location. Okay. So that is interesting because we can then map how the galactic magnetic field at different point it looks like, which is itself is a research topic. How the, because we know that there is a galaxy has a magnetic field of order of microgauss. So why this magnetic field is there of this order, and what is the origin of that? So one of this thing is primordial magnetic field, and the primordial magnetic field leaves its impact in the CMB B mode polarization. Okay. So now you can see that if I filter out the spectral part, the amplitude part has this nice feature. So this map is at 5 arc minute, and this is plotted in log scale to highlight this 3 order of magnitude difference, so -6 to -3. So there is a lot of features in that map, which is itself is very interesting. Okay. So what we can do is something called dust to gas ratio. Okay. So from this is a Planck map. Okay. Uh, so it includes the dust contribution, and we can make 21 centimeter map from the ground. Okay, so this is for a lot of years. This H1 data was collected by this gas survey, and they produced the map at 15 arc minute. So these two maps looks amazingly similar. Okay, so there are some details. So like there are this red region which is not here, but to first order it looks very similar. So it means that those people who are working on H1 emission through the ground-based radio telescope, so they don't need to spend like that much like effort to make this kind of map. So we can do it with the Planck. Only thing is this is in different units, of course. So because this is in column density units, so it's order of 10 to the 20. So it says like how much, like what is the optical depth, and this is in intensity units. So the advantage is that once we know dust to gas ratio, okay, so then we can use the CMB experiment to map it over the whole sky. So here it is mapped from the southern hemisphere, so that's why it is this white region is missing. In Planck, there is no restriction, and now there are future generation experiments are planned. So this dust to gas ratio will help to know uh, the dust uh, contained in the universe. Okay. Uh, okay. So while fitting this, we can get the dust temperature also. So that is also we will. So there are this gas are in the order of. So they are in different phases. So they are in cold neutral medium, hot neutral medium, warm neutral medium. Okay. So in radio astronomy, they are trying to probe this medium and see like what are the like how to distinguish these different gas phases and what is the importance of those. Okay. When we look at the dust temperature, it is not at order of 5,000. It is order of like 20 to 30 Kelvin. But there is a distinct feature. It's not a uniform dust temperature everywhere. So it is mostly there are cold dust, which is along the galactic plane, and the dust is heated up when you go to the high latitude sky. Okay. So this cold dust is important for formation of stars. So there are Gould Belt survey, or that is the region, Gould Belt region, where most of the star formation takes place in our own galaxy. So this map is mostly dominated by the emission from our own galaxy. The other galaxies are it's not we do not resolve the dust from that, and they also have 1 over r square dependence. So if they are far away, they don't contribute much to this map. Okay. Uh, so one thing which is people study is the spectral index of the dust emission, which basically tells like what are the components of the dust, like how it is made up of. So now there are different components which people study analytically. So there is a carbon dust, there is a silicon dust, and then there is a called polyaromatic hydrocarbon. Okay. So these are the all these dust particles, or their combination of all these basic ingredients. So they can contribute to the emission what we see in this map, but there is no, in the spectral index also there is no clear pattern. So it is steeper in the galactic plate, so it is more close to 2.2, and it is very flat 1.2 around when we're looking away from the galactic center. Okay. So galactic center is mostly in this part, which will basically it shows up as a steeper spectrum, and this part is basically when we're looking away from the center of the galaxy. Okay. So looking in the opposite direction. So then there is something called small Magellanic cloud. So it will show as a very flat spectrum. So if dust, they all evolve similarly. So it should be similar to the dust in the SMC, should be similar to our own Milky Way galaxy. So here the average is 1.6, but for SMC, it was found that it is like 1.2. So why the dust spectral index is different in different location or different location on the sky. So it tells you something about the history of the dust evolution, like how these particles are formed, and like how long it stays. So it depends on all those things. Okay, so once we have this amplitude, we can make this. So this is the map of the optical depth. So we filter out the amplitude beta and the temperature part. So once we left with the amplitude, okay, and we can convert to Reddening map. So Reddening map is defined usually with this quantity E B minus B. So this is a B filter and this is V filter. So it tells you like how much dust is absorbed. So this map is for Planck. So this is towards a particular region, which is rho Ophiuchus molecular cloud, and this is done by 2-mass survey. Okay. So there are other surveys which are only doing this, measuring this dust emission. Okay. So you can see that it has a lot of noise. So there is a lot of effort to make this map, and for Planck, it is just coming as like a extra product. So once we have this multi-frequency maps, we scale out the frequency dependence, and whatever the amplitude part, we can just correlate with the quasars, and we get what is the scaling relation. We just scale that tau into the Reddening map, and it gives a much better map compared to this 2-mass. Okay. And it is done on some localized region on the sky, but with this technique, we can make full sky E minus B map. There are some assumptions goes on that whatever we measure in this line of sight is applicable to other than that, like it comes for free. Okay. Then there is something called zodiacal light emission. So this is due to the interplanetary dust in our solar system, concentrated within the orbit of the Jupiter. Okay. So this is this dust particles, which basically emits mostly in infrared frequencies, is subdominant in microwave frequency, but it is important for CMB channels. So we are targeting, when we're looking from 100 to 857 gigahertz, there it has this contribution. Okay, so how we identify those? So in Planck, we scan every 6 months. Okay, so if you make a difference between this survey 1 and survey 2, okay, so this interplanetary dust or zodiacal light emission appears here. Okay. So not in this because so this is the model. Okay. So this is usually in the ecliptic plane. So this dust is not randomly distributed. So they are distributed in a particular order and is rotating around the sun orbit. So this at particular line of sight, it will observe like this. And just to show you like what are the complexities, so this is the F87 gigahertz map for survey 1 and survey 2. So after like 6 months separated. So broadly, those two maps look similar. Okay. So when doing the 6 month survey, this gray region is not observed. Okay. So this is the limitation. So you need something more than 6 months to observe this part of the sky. And the next 6 months, it will observe this part, but it is still missing some part here. Okay. So when we subtract these two maps, we expect it to be noise, but what we observe is something this kind of pattern. So there is a this blue pattern which is goes through this region. So this is due to the zodiacal light emission, so which is here. So depending on like how you scan it, you will see either in positive side or negative side. And this all these features are due to the instrument. Okay, so the instrument properties changes by the time of observation, and it will artificially produce this kind of residuals. So you can see the scale here is from 0 to 10, and this is 0.2. So this is subdominant, but it is not negligible. Okay. So the next thing is cosmic infrared background anisotropy. So this is also very important. So it comes from cosmological diffuse background light produced by the integrated emission of galaxy throughout the cosmic history. So it's basically through this emission we are tracing the first galaxy. Okay, so we cannot resolve them, so it will be a diffuse pattern, something similar to this map. Okay, so this is just to show that at infrared frequencies, the zodiacal light is very bright. You can see here. There's a dust emission. So once we remove the dust and the zodiacal light emission, we get this fluctuation map. So this is very similar to CMB map. Only thing is that it has a different power spectrum. So it does not have those oscillations. And the origin is different. So this is mostly dominant at higher frequency. CMB frequency, it is subdominant. Okay, so when we look at the sky at different frequencies, so CMB is the is most abundant material, okay, or the abundant species. So we can see them first. It has this black body spectrum of 2.7 Kelvin. The next bright object that we will see is cosmic infrared background. And then there is a cosmic optical background. Okay. So, so if you can measure this cosmic infrared background, so there is some overlap with the CMB bands. So it is not exactly goes to zero. We can study the galaxy formation. Okay. So which itself is a interesting topic. So with Planck, we can make very good high resolution maps of this cosmic infrared background anisotropies. So this is basically animation showing that how at different frequencies this cosmic infrared background anisotropy changes. Okay. So it is not a blackbody spectrum; it's a modified blackbody spectrum. So it it will behave like a dust emission with a steeper, flatter spectral index. Okay. Then there's something interesting which we can do is CO line emission or carbon monoxide line emission. So when the Planck experiment was proposed, they did not thought about that this line emission is also dominant in this Planck frequency bands. Okay. So so what happens is that all the Planck frequencies like 100 gigahertz, 270 gigahertz, 53 gigahertz. So there are line transition due to this. This is due to the molecule carbon monoxide, which basically peaks at different frequencies, and we can see those carbon monoxide signature in the Planck maps. Okay, so with because we have many detectors in that channel, so by subtracting accurately by doing some manipulation, we can make a CO map. So this CO map is interesting to know because it tells you where the molecular clouds are. So where the molecular clouds are or wherever the star formation takes place, we can see its signature in the form of carbon monoxide line. So it is basically showing that all the star formation in our galaxies are happening close to the galactic plane. Okay, not at the high latitude. It's very faint outside, but mostly it is happening in the around the galactic plane region. Okay, so just to give you an idea, uh, before Planck, around 2002, so Dame he observed the CO through ground-based telescopes. So he collected data like 10 years of data, okay, through a small telescope. And this is the map it is obtained. Okay, so the white region is actually not observed here. Okay, so there are some discrete. So he starts from some small region and then he try to cover the galactic plane. Okay, so this is the map. The situation of the CO, our understanding of the CO map at around 2003. Okay, and now with Planck we can get a full sky map. Okay, which is a continuous map. Other region it is small. It is just to uh, otherwise we have to plot in log scale to highlight those high latitude sky region. So it's not detected with great significance. It is at least in the galactic plane it is detected with high significance. Okay, and to verify that, so this is the region which is marked with this boundary where the Dame he made this survey using Harvard telescope. Okay, and to the Planck one, if you want to see like what we get is actually correct or not, so it was compared with the Planck with the Dame survey at different location. So these are the different location: Taurus, Polaris, Orion. So these are the cluster constellation names, and here most of the basically star. These are molecular clouds also, where most of the star formation takes place. And you can see there is a linear correlation works. There is a strong linear correlation. It's not that all is exact because this uh, instrument has its own noise. Planck data has its own noise, but the basically this linear relation shows that to very high accuracy we can make a CO map. Okay. Okay. So it is also can be synergized with Fermilab. Okay. So this is a space-based mission Fermi, where it is looking at the gamma ray in this frequency, in this energy range, zero point 0.6 to 7 GeV. So low frequency, we talk about wavelength or frequency, but high wavelength, high energy, we talk about in terms of energy scale. So this is the Fermi data, okay, and this is the dust map from Planck, or optical depth map. So you can see there is a very striking similarity between the of Planck map, which is in microwave frequency, and something is observed in the gamma ray. So this emission is this gamma ray emission is due to the interaction of the cosmic ray electron with the gaseous medium, and this dust emission is due to the interaction of dust with the gas. So in both the gas is common. So it is both are basically tracing the how the gas is distributed over the galaxy. Okay. So it is important to know like what are the different components which contribute to the optical depth. So there is a neutral hydrogen which is H1. Okay. So the hydrogen can stay in neutral form or molecular form or ionized form. Okay. So if you can measure all of this, uh, and we can want to see if this can account for the total optical depth or not. So what is found with compared the gamma ray telescope data and the microwave data, that there's something called dark gas. Okay, so there's like dark matter, dark energy. So something if you don't understand, we say dark. So here is something called dark gas, which says that basically there is extra component present which contributes to the total gas trace. So it's not only gas is in neutral phase, ionized phase, molecular phase. There is also something which you don't understand, which is we call as in dark phase. So this is the image of the optical depth from Planck, and then we can measure CO independently. What is the neutral phase hydrogen? Once we subtract all of them, so this is done here. So this is the T dust. We subtract the scale version of H1, scale version of CO. This is the residual, and the similar kind of residual is observed in the Fermi data also. So which is highlighting the dust or the dark gas component. So it basically says that dark gas contains around 1/4 of the H1 mass and twice the CO bright mass. Okay. Also, we can do is by looking at the spectrum. So this is all done with the amplitude part, but there is a spectral part. So from the spectral part, we can tell what are the different composition of the dust particles. So Bruce Drain and Lee, they make a model of the dust spectrum using different components. So they put small silicate, carbonaceous grain, silicate grain, polyaromatic hydrocarbon, small carbon. So this is the spectrum it is observed. Okay, and this is the work where in the Planck collaboration where they put all the observed data set and try to constrain what are the composition of the dust emission. Okay. So basically, what it comes out from this analysis is that if you put the data set here, Planck data set, and combined with other data set, we can say like what are the broad components. So currently, the understanding is that there is large carbon which dominate at the microwave frequency. Then there is a silicate grade, and there are small carbon grains which are subdominant at Planck frequencies, but at lower wavelength it is dominant. So this is like those who are interested in dust physics. They are working on this, trying to get this number right, so that we can explain the observed spectrum. There is something called anomalous microwave emission, which is basically originating from small dust grains. So previously, people thought that there are like only the large grains which are contributing, but later on, this measurement shows that it cannot be accounted by these two large grains. We need small carbon grains, and these small carbon grains also emit in the microwave frequencies. So usually dust contributes from 100 gigahertz to 1000 gigahertz or in this high frequency range. But this, due to its size, it contributes to the lower frequency. Okay, so this is the frequency where it dominates. So before that, like before Planck with WMAP, there was some evidence of this anomalous microwave emission. But with Planck, it was very confirmed. So because the signal to noise ratio is very high, so we can measure this bump. So usually, if it is in this case, I think there is a synchrotron emission and the thermal dust emission. This is what I expected. Now we see like two component of spinning dust emission, which are a different medium, which leads to this bulb. And later on, it was measured with many different sources. So this is like there are different sources like to see like how it behaves. So at yes, at lower frequencies like 0.4 gigahertz or 1.4 gigahertz. So this is the location of that spinning dust. We don't see any emission there. Okay, so it peaks around this frequency range, 22 to 44 gigahertz, And then at higher frequency, sometimes it stays, sometimes it is it's not clear. So this is this peak is there due to this spinning dust emission. So they are very diffuse emission, uh, diffuse localized emission. Okay. And then at those frequencies, some other energy component or the foreground component start dominating. Okay. So you start seeing those red regions. But in this frequency range, 20 to 44 gigahertz, there is a clear signature of this spinning dust emission. So these are the different sources where in some sources it is not that strong. So it can be fitted with this power law model plus modified Black-Body spectrum. In some sources it is very small bump. Okay. In some sources it's very the bump height is very high. Okay. So we can do that. So this is all we can do with the temperature map. So I quickly go through the polarization part, which is also important. So all this emission probably can contribute to the polarization. So for CMB, we are looking at temperature and polarization to cancel out some degeneracy. So for polarization is important to rule out or to make to constrain the model. So for dust, if you say there is silicon grains or carbon grains, so there is a distinct signature in polarization. If you can measure the spectrum in polarization, we can distinguish between different models. So in polarization, we always talk about linear polarization. So it is defined by Stokes Q and U parameter. So basically, if the polarization is in horizontal direction or vertical direction, we call as Stokes Q. So vertical is Q is equal to 0. Q greater than 0, there should not be any U. If it's horizontal, Q is less than 0, you know U. And then at 45-degree angle, no Q, only U is there. Okay. So that is the convention we follow. So this is, so we, by looking at the polarization thing, we can tell whether it is only Q mode or U mode. Okay. So if it is, so we show the map and as Q and U maps. Okay. So here positive Q means and no U means the polarization is in vertical direction. So this map, like how to interpret this map. So it will tell you that if I put the polarization vector, that the light is linearly polarized in the vertical direction. Similarly, if it is negative, it is means that it is in horizontal direction. Okay. So instead of looking at the each polarization vector, we can look at the pattern. So if it is a pattern like this divergence, it's like positive point charge. So the electric field is something like that. So then we call it as E mode. Okay. Or if it is like this, if you rotate this by 90 degree, you get this kind of pattern. So each vector, if you rotate by 90 degree. B has some handedness. So if it is right-handed or left-handed, so this, if you rotate by 45-degree angle, it is basically B mode. So E is like proportional to some combination of Q and U, but basically it's dominated by Q mode, and B is dominated by U mode. So what we're looking at this pattern, and from that we can infer basically it is E mode or B mode, and we can compute the power spectrum. Okay. So there is a leakage from E to B, which can be used to detect the B mode, lensing B mode signal. Okay. So why it is like for our purpose, these foregrounds are important because we need to, if we want to achieve this scalar tensor ratio of 0.1, or now we are talking about 10 to the minus 3, this dust emission is very high. Okay. So in temperature or intensity, when we talk about Planck temperature, the CMB signal is much higher than the foreground. So there, if you make error, it does not matter. But for polarization, the dust signal is much higher. So this plot is showing the dust to CMB ratio. So here the dust signal is much higher compared to the CMB signal. So we want to measure this thing very accurately to extract or clean the dust emission and extract the CMB signal. So this dust emission is happening because of the dust property or dust alignment. So they are, you can assume that they are like a top, small top you played with in your childhood. So they are small dust particles which are spinning around a axis. So this axis is the direction of the magnetic field. Okay. So they presses around that direction. Okay. So what happens is that if there is an unpolarized light uh, coming in the optical band, so this dust grains, they are precessing around this magnetic field. So they will absorb one direction of polarization. So they will transmit linear polarization in optical, and whatever part they absorb, they will emit in the infrared frequency. So by studying at that location, the optical and the infrared, we can tell that whether it is coming from the same dust or not. And also by looking at the optical, we can say what is the interplay between the structure of the magnetic field and the interstellar matter. So this is the same picture. Basically, the star is coming, star is producing unpolarized light. It will go through the spinning dust emission, the dust grain which is spinning around the magnetic field. It will allow one direction light to pass, other one will absorb, and it will emit in the infrared frequencies. Let me skip that. Okay. So dust polarization, why it is important? Because Planck gives, for the first time, the possibility to study the galactic magnetic field through the tracer of the interstellar medium. So if you can measure this dust emission, we know that these dust particles are moving around the direction of magnetic field. So the polarization will be in the direction. Once we do proper Fourier transformation, it will be in the direction. It will give me the direction of the galactic magnetic field. So the galactic magnetic field itself is an interesting topic. So there are many traces like synchrotron emission you can be used to measure the amplitude of the galactic magnetic field on the direction. There is the Faraday rotation. Okay. So this is mostly people in radio astronomy, they do to measure the direction of the galactic magnetic field. But in dust polarization also does this through this emission process. So by measuring the dust emission, we can tell what is the orientation of the galactic magnetic field. Okay. So for the first time, Planck provided the magnetic field direction over the full sky. So we measure it at the galactic scale or some localized region. But first time we can see that what is the orientation of the galactic magnetic field over the full sky. Okay. So these vectors are giving the direction of the polarization. Yeah. So direction of magnetic. So the magnetic field is a three-dimensional quantity, and in the plot we are showing in on the projection effect, like on the 2D surface, and you can see that it is aligned with the galactic plane. Okay, and then there are large correlated patterns. So this galactic magnetic field is not random. So it means that there is something which is more ordered. Okay, over the large scales. So yeah, so that is the idea. Also, it gives you the like how much dust is polarized. Okay, so which is determined by this small p. So people earlier expected that it is order of 3 to 4%, but now with Planck, it is found to be 20%. So all the models of dust currently they are all ruled out because they, from theoretical expectation, it should not be polarized that much, like order of 4 to 5%. But observationally, we found that the dust are polarized to very high percent. So it means that this tops that it is there, they are not, they're precision very close to the galactic magnetic field direction. Okay. So what is, there are like different theories to like how the dust presses around this galactic magnetic field. Earlier it was very relaxed, so that's why it basically produces less polarization. And this polarization is not constant. So some regions are very highly polarized, some regions are less polarized. So these are galactic plane region. So galactic plane region is usually less polarized because you have long line of sight and the polarization is random. Okay, so they will cancel out, and on the net we don't produce much polarization. When we look away or the away from the center, we expect more polarization because there are not many structures are there. So not averaging effect will not come into picture. So we see more, but it is more than what we expect. Okay. And this thing can be broadly classified into this model where you can see there are less polarization in this blue region and more polarization in this red region. So this is because of the projection effect. So this magnetic field, if you know this magnetic field is tracing the spiral arms. So these are three-dimensional quantities. So when we do projection on the 2D surface, we expect to have less polarization in this blue region and more polarization in the red region. So in the observationally, it is more or less consistent. So you can see where it is red, we see more polarization and less in this blue region. So it is, this is to take into account the projection effect. So it is consistent with the projection effect, but the polarization fraction is very high. Okay. And in polarization also, it is not just a scale version of intensity. So this is some region, molecular cloud region. This is the intensity map, and this is the polarization map, polarization intensity map. So you can see they are not similar. So the polarization is mostly higher in the boundary regions. So it is not clear why in the boundary region, the sky is more polarized compared to the region where you have emission. So there is some anti-correlation between this small p and I. So like I said, we can observe the dust emission of the same dust in optical and in infrared. It should be 90-degree aligned. So this plot is showing some observation of 101 stars. Okay. And you can see that this angle between the visible light polarization and the infrared polarization is 90-degree. Okay. So it is some scatter is there because of the noise present in both the data set. So now we can, so assuming that they are tracing the dust, same dust, we can calculate how much it emits in infrared over how much it emits in optical, and we can study this correlation ratio. So from the data, we found it to be 4.5 with some error bar, but from the model, we expect it to be around 2 or 2.5. So here, basically, again, something new thing which we are learning is that whatever we before Planck, whatever we understanding of the dust we have, they are not consistent with the observation. So it means that we are using this to measuring distance and all those things. So we have to revisit the data part or the modeling part and see if we can improve our understanding. Okay. So this is basically to show, like it was before Planck 2009. So it was of, there was the different model was predicted to, so you can see there is a like lot of uncertainty. So it was Yeah, let me come to this. So there was like four model were predicted. So in some model, this small p, population fraction, or p over I, is constant. In some, it is increasing. So that was the expectation. And you can see that the population fraction here is order of like 7% if it is constant. And if it is increasing, it is going to go up to like 13%. Okay. So this was the year when the Planck satellite was launched. And now we have a better measurement of the spectrum. Okay. So I plotted in the opposite direction. So here the lambda is increasing, so frequency is decreasing. Okay, in this right direction. Here I'm increasing the frequency. Okay, so if you look at the frequency decreasing, it means that here you can see this small p is actually decreasing slightly, which is in this case it is expected that either it will increase or become constant. What we are observing is from the data set is that it is when we go to lower frequency, the population fraction decreases. So this basically gives the idea that what are the different component of the dust is. So if it is one component of dust like carbon grains, it can the same carbon grain will emit in the polarization. So the ratio should be constant. If it is decreasing, means there is at least two component of dust grain is needed, like carbon and silica. So the carbon, they both will contribute to intensity, but one will contribute to the polarization. And due to that, we expect this kind of behavior. Yeah, I'm almost time. So this is the summary. So basically, with a Planck, we can have not only we do cosmology with the cosmological parameter estimation, we can extract a lot of galactic signs, and we can understand either we can do like looking at the modeling part and try to reconcile that it is consistent with the data or not. And other things we can, a lot of other things we can run from the Planck data. Something like which is interesting is dark gas, which people are following up, like what is the origin of that and why we see this similarity between the Fermi data and the Planck data. So with that, I will finish. Okay, so if you have any question, I'm happy to take it.
Sir, I had a question from the first part of the lecture.
Yes.
So, you showed that we can simulate the all sky map from some given cosmological parameter values and those things.
Yes.
So, so by doing those simulation, have we seen some cosmological features like cold spots or something like that from those simulations by giving the known cosmological parameter values?
Cold spots are basically because when you calculate CL, it has this power spectrum, so it does not have this uh, like the phase information. Okay, so there is like when we have temperature map, we have more information. Like the when we decompose into spherical harmonics, we have L and M information. So it determines where the location of the cold spot. But when we do the simulation from the power spectrum, it will be all scattered around. So it will not exactly at that location. So it will be scattered around some sky. It's like that if you use this software and make a CME map, it never looks like a Planck map. So statistically, it will have all the properties, like the power spectrum, it will match, two-point correlation function, it will match, but it will never reproduce the actual data. Now, this cold spot is something which is anomalous. So it is deviating like 5 sigma from the expected distribution. So which is very unlikely to be in the lambda CDM model. So, and it is something which you don't see by eye. It is picked up by wavelet analysis. So where it is filtered out all the background, nearby background, and try to extract that spot. So by eye, anyway, like we're not able to, even if you simulate, you cannot say that this location is dominated by cold spot or like like hotspot where it is more than what is expected from the lambda CDM model. So it is very like detailed analysis, which kind of like wavelet analysis, which picks up like the significance of that. And as far as I know, all this model, they cannot reproduce that. So it is the limitation of the model, because it is like what is people expect is that it is coming from the void. And in this model, we give equal preference to all the sky regions. So there is no like, in some particular regions, we give more hotspot or more less hotspot like that. Now, does it answer your question?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. But not the specific location. At any location, something like so, some cooler spot or hotter spot greater than 1 degree or something like that. That can, and there is a probability. But okay, you
There
if
is a
there.
probability, like it's a like Gaussian distribution if you take.
Mm-hmm.
Usually plus minus 3 sigma it will remain, right? Uh,
Okay.
but this is 5 sigma. So 5 sigma will be there, but is very like less likely.
Like
Simulate like 1 lakh thing, maybe 1 or 10 will pop up. If you do 1,000, maybe none will pop up.
okay, sir.
Okay. Any other question?
So any other questions or comments? Okay, so I guess there is no more questions. On behalf of Technology Innovation Hub, as well as on behalf of the participants, let me thank Professor Tuhin Ghosh once again for this wonderful series of lectures and hands-on sessions on CMB physics. So I'm pretty sure that will help the participants a lot in going deeper into the subject. So thank you, Tuhin, once again for your time and for these lectures and etc. So that's all for this session, and we'll meet once again at 2:20 today with Professor Dheeraj Kumar Hajra. Thank you all.